Hi everyone, welcome to the lessons on the Cold War. And this lesson, we are going to be finishing off at those wartime conferences. So it's the last one, it's the Potsdam Conference of 1945. So by the end of the lesson, you'll know how to explain the events of what happened, what was agreed at the Potsdam Conference, and those really important, those consequences. What happens as a result? And these conferences in particular are really important because we are laying the groundwork for the rest of the Cold War. So the wartime conferences, we've got Tehran in 1943, and then two more in 45 at the end of the war, Yalta and Potsdam. So thank you, please, is how we remember it. We've done the T, we've done the Y. Potsdam is the last one. So just think about what you remember from the previous two lessons. So what happened at Tehran? What happened at the Yalta conference? So just pause the video and just jot down as much as you can remember. Okay, so for Tehran, you might have had about the agreement with Poland that Russia would get part of Poland. And in the Potsdam conference, they actually decide what the land is, exactly how much Russia's getting. So that's coming up. Tehran is still in 43, so the war's going. So you might have said about they agreed to set up a second front with America and Britain fighting the war. And they start to formalize the idea of a United Nations. Then we're back in Yalta in 45. They firm up the United Nations. And now they're starting to look at what Europe will look like after the war. So we get that division of Germany, so proof they just can't agree with each other. And that issue again around Poland and Eastern Europe about free elections, about how much control the Soviets would have. So Potsdam Conference happens in July and a couple of days in August 1945, so right at the end of the war. And I've got Stalin there on his own because he is the only leader that was at Tehran and Yalta and Potsdam. So the only leader that makes it to all three conferences is Stalin from the Soviets. So in America, poor Roosevelt has died. And in his place, his vice president, Truman, becomes the president. So Truman hasn't really been kept up to date on World War II and what's happening. The vice president role isn't a really big one at this time. So he is a bit sort of thrown in the deep end then. And unlike Roosevelt, who's very diplomatic, Roosevelt's very good at sort of smoothing things over. Truman is not tactful in any way, and he hates communism with a passion. So now he's going to go storming into a conference with Stalin the communist, and it's not going to go well. So we replace Roosevelt the diplomat with Truman the I hate communist guy. So that's a really negative change that's going to come in. And in Great Britain, a bit of a shock for Churchill. There's an election just after World War II. Churchill loses the election and he loses it to the chap you see there, Attlee, Clement Attlee. So if you do medicine through time, Attlee wins the election against Churchill on the promise of setting up the NHS. So just in case you're wondering how he managed to beat Churchill, he promises the NHS. So a little link there with your medicine course if you're doing that option. So for Stalin, this is a real difference. He did have Roosevelt and Churchill. He'd met them a couple of times. He got to know them well. Now he's got these two new people, Truman and Attlee. So decisions they make, they confirm this agreement to divide Germany into four parts. So they make some sensible decisions, like they're going to like hold trials for Nazi leaders that they've captured. But they can't come up with any agreement on what to do with Germany beyond this kind of look, we can't agree, so let's just divide it up and we'll do what we like in our own zone. And it's such a shame, and it's going to be such a cause of the Cold War. So they go ahead with this idea. Everyone gets their own zone. What you do in it is your own business. Note as well, Berlin gets divided up into four. They keep with that agreement. So Berlin's going to be a real hotspot all the way through the Cold War. And Poland. Now, this is crazy. So they agree that Poland, some of Poland is going to be given to Russia. Britain's not happy about it, but it is what it is. Then they're like, well, that's not really fair on Poland. So Poland's losing lots of land, but Poland's on our side. So, well, Poland shares a border with Germany. So what we'll do, we'll just take loads of land off Germany and give it to Poland. So if you look at the picture on the board, the bit in the middle in that kind of grey colour, that is Poland all the way through. So if you're living in that area as a Pole, you are fine. You're going to just be in Poland. The bit off to the right in that kind of beigey colour, that's the bit that Russia gets. So you're Polish, living in that area, you are now part of Russia. The bit in blue on the left, that is the bit that was German and is now Polish. So Poland shifts on the map. It moves westward. Really bizarre, really bizarre. So Poland shifts over a bit and becomes the area in blue. Not the ideal solution. So, one other big thing that happens at the Potsdam conference is about the atomic bomb. And again, this is going to be so important later on for the Cold War. So, the US had developed the atomic bomb. They announced they've tested it. They will, in a few weeks' time, drop it on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. But they announce it. So, it's really important. 4 years after this, America will be the only country that has the atomic bomb. So they are all powerful. Nobody can mess with them. They have all of the power. So this is the beginning of it. So after those 4 years, Russia develops their own atomic bomb. So for the moment, America is feeling pretty pleased with itself. Especially Truman. Remember, he hates communists. He's not very diplomatic. He is the only person in the world who can unleash an atomic bomb. He's feeling pretty powerful. And there's a story about how he announces it to Stalin, and you just know that Truman has been waiting for this moment and has been looking forward to sort of telling Stalin they've got the atomic bomb. Amusingly, Stalin's already found out through his spies. So his spies have already told him, and although he is very concerned about this, he does manage to do a kind of straight face, oh, gee, that's interesting, huh? And it really disappoints Truman. Truman does not get the reaction he wants. But what it means, America doesn't feel like it has to be diplomatic anymore because they're all powerful. So if they ruffle some feathers and they upset a few countries, who cares? They've got the atomic bomb. And that's going to cause problems down the road. So the Potsdam Conference, lasting effects. The whole point of it and all of these conferences was to secure peace. That was the aim of why they all meet up. But ironically, it ends up paving the way for decades and decades of mistrust and tension. So there you have it. Now you know all there is to know about the wartime conferences. Next few lessons, we're going to look at the effect of them.